This is Digital Breakthroughs, putting the spotlight on cutting-edge digital marketing strategies for your business. With your host, CEO of industry-recognized digital marketing and social media agency, National Positions, Bernard May.
I'm really excited today to have Leo Griffin join us. Leo is the VP of Digital Strategy over at VF Corporation. VF is one of the world's largest footwear and apparel companies. And Leo is actually one of the leaders at the company, leading the digital transformation of VF's 20 brands, which include Vans, the Northface, Timberland, Dickies, JanSport, and Smart Wool, just to name a few. Leo, welcome to the show. It's great to have you here.
Bernard, it's so great to be with you. Thank you for the invitation.
I'd love to just start out by telling the audience maybe a little bit about yourself and how you got into digital marketing.
Yeah, certainly. Thank you, Bernard. It's a delight to be here with you. So the first thing I should say actually is that I'm not VF's Chief Digital Officer. That is my boss, Valia Carboni. So I definitely don't want to take her job. I'm grateful for her leadership over all our digital initiatives. But yeah, a little bit about how I came to VF. So I've had a non-linear career. I started out as a strategy consultant and spent about a dozen years in strategy consulting, most of it with a company called Monitor, which is now part of Deloitte. And I then transitioned to venture capital and then private equity, and invested in media and technology businesses. And from there then went to run a couple of companies, smaller companies of my own. So I ran, in fact, a branded organic food manufacturer for a while, and then also an Internet of Things business, and from there to VF and helping to lead our overall digital transformation.
So I know, Leo, you're going through a lot of challenges right now. Obviously, we've got the coronavirus going on as we speak, and I'm sure that's had a big impact on the fashion industry. How do you think it's impacting, companies like yours? This whole, I know there are 20 brands, if I'm right, within the VF scope of business, and what's happening right now in your industry?
Yeah, so obviously this has a massive impact on our industry. We have, and this has been impacting global companies like VF for some months now. We started to see the impact of this early in January as we began to shut down our stores in China and our Shanghai and Hong Kong Asia hubs. So saw people working from home out of those locations pretty early on. That I think has been useful to companies like us in at least being able to create the playbook a little bit for how to handle this crisis. So we now see that in North America and Europe, our stores are closed and our associates are working from home. And in fact, we're now in a place where over 90% of our stores in China are open again, and our associates there are beginning to come back to work in offices. So we're seeing kind of the beginning, middle, and hopefully tail of this crisis at different points around the world. Obviously, in addition to all of our stores being closed, and I should say just quickly, how proud I am that we're continuing to pay all of our retail associates. We haven't furloughed anybody, and so in our thousands of stores around the world, we're continuing to pay people a wage and allow them to continue to live, continue their livelihood, even though they're not showing up for work. But in addition to that, of course, a lot of our retail partners are shutting or have shut stores down. Obviously you saw Macy's furloughing the majority of their 130,000 workers and closing their stores. And so Macy's is not one of our primary partners, but others like Nordstrom, for example, where we do a good deal of business with them. That has a huge impact. I think the other issues that we're seeing are you saw Target talk about the changes in their sales mix that they're experiencing, and there's obviously a big uptake in kind of essentials, food, and kind of basics, and obviously a lot of cleaning and sanitation products and so on. So they're seeing big upticks in those sales, but they're seeing apparel sales drop. And I don't think that that's surprising, because people are outside less, they are out in the public less, and obviously they're prioritizing their spend, because we are now in the middle of a recession, and particularly for outdoor brands, I think they have to think through how they can remain relevant, and how their stories can continue to be relevant in a world in which we're increasingly stuck inside.
Well, that's first of all, very commendable about VF paying all the employees while they're not working, and extremely impressed by that. And I was trying to look at things as kind of the new normal, and then there's what was normal and what will be normal as things progress. And I think that's a lot of what we're looking at National Positions for our current clients, where they are now, where they're going to be. And I was wondering if we could maybe take ourselves a little bit out of the current normal and go to where we were. I mean, even back if we were going into 2019 and the early part of 2020, what kinds of issues? I know there's retail stores out there today, even compared to a couple of years ago. What were other issues that were facing and maybe not any issues, but what are the opportunities that you're feeling that are out there, and other areas that could help the fashion industry grow over time, that you're seeing besides what's happening now with coronavirus and COVID-19?
Yeah, I mean, I think we are obviously living in a period of just dramatic change for the fashion industry, for the retail industry in general, and obviously with the onset of a new recession, and we'll hope that it's a very short-lived one, but the onset of a new recession suddenly, and massive changes in people's everyday patterns of life, adjusting to that it creates a lot of challenges, and I'm quite certain that we will see winners and losers coming out of this. I think it's commendable that the government is seeking to support both small and medium-sized companies and larger enterprises, but nonetheless, I think that we'll see stronger companies that have perhaps been more conservatively managed and have deeper pockets are going to come out of this in a stronger relative competitive position than others, and I do expect that we'll see, unfortunately, some bankruptcies in the retail sector as a result of this. I would say with all of these shifts going on, and obviously the changing roles of channels and so on is something that I spend quite a bit of time thinking about. There's one that I would highlight for the fashion industry that's not really related at all to either coronavirus or the role of e-commerce and changing roles of channels, and that's really the importance of the environment. And I think that and the environmental impact of the fashion and apparel industry. By many measures, we are the second most polluting industry in the world. That's after oil, right? So I think I think consumers are beginning to wake up to this. It's something that a few years ago I think very few consumers would have been aware of, and I think you're beginning to see consumers really, having some understanding of the environmental impact, particularly of fast fashion, right? An industry that's sort of set up to produce things that you wear, maybe 2 or 3 times and throw away, and that are often made out of materials that have a significant environmental impact, and those then go into landfill. I think that is going to, over the next 5 years, drive consumers are going to expect very significant changes from our industry, and I think that creates a real opportunity for companies that are leaders in that space. It is something that we are working very hard on at VF, and are a leader in that space. But we have certainly much more work to do.
That is extremely interesting. I know geeking out on a couple of trends and where we're going. Of course, the environment is so important to so many people. Are we actually going to get to the point where everybody will have their sizes on file, and big data will be there, and you're going to be served up clothing that'll be related to your specific dimensions and needs and preferences? Do you think we'll ever get to something like that with big data?
I think machine learning and big data certainly has a very big role to play in the apparel industry. Coming back to the environmental theme, I think that one of the things that big data can help us to do is to make sure that we are making the right amount of product, that we are having the right size, right color, right style in the right store, right place, at the right time for the consumer who wants it. That once you're running thousands of stores and you've got thousands of different SKUs, it becomes an incredibly challenging problem, right, to solve, because you have to try and figure out really where each unit of clothing is best placed for most likely to have a consumer want to buy it. And as you develop that efficiency, it should allow retailers to actually make less product, because right now, if you don't have the really accurate insights on where you need to put product, you're going to put too much product in the store, and then the result of that, of course, is markdowns and closeouts, or moving it out to off-price channels, and other ways of liquidating that inventory. So I think that's something that we're certainly working hard at, and putting investments into, and I do think that coming back to the theme of environmentalism, it will have an impact there. There are lots of other areas where big data can play a role. And you talked a little bit about personalization and how do you deliver for an individual the product that they really want. I'm fascinated by Stitch Fix, which is a growing emerging player in the apparel market that develops really deep data-based insights into their shoppers and delivers custom packages to their several million consumers of basically hand-picked outfits and pieces of apparel. But while there's human curation in that, there is a human touch in it. The vast majority of the selection and the understanding of what a consumer is likely to buy is big data driven, and they have a team of over 150 data scientists that is just working on solving those problems of understanding consumer need and driving that personalization. So I think we'll continue to see that, and consumers are demanding more personalization. I think there's an interesting tension between the consumer desire for greater personalization, but at the same time a concern around how much data companies are capturing, and of course that data is necessary to drive that personalization.
I was wondering, that's so interesting, and I know people have even spoken about, potentially having clothing be produced, locally through 3D printing and things like that. But I was wondering if I could maybe pivot a little bit to talk about Amazon. And of course, we're seeing with most of our clients that a lot of the sales, sometimes up to 50 or more % of the online sales are happening on Amazon. But we're also seeing brands like Nike. They're pulling, Nike in 2019 pulled all their brands off Amazon. What are you guys doing? What is your view on Amazon, and are there any other alternatives to Amazon that you're seeing?
Yeah, so I can't really speak to Nike and their intentions. I don't have any insider knowledge on that. What I would say though is I'm pretty sure that if you go to Amazon and type in Nike, you'll see there's a lot of Nike shoes available on Amazon. So Nike, I think that there was a lot of publicity around that move, but it didn't really change the availability of Nike shoes on the Amazon platform. It's just that my impression is that Nike's not selling direct on Amazon, but their retail partners are. So I think Amazon is very, very good. They're world class at some things. They're not good at everything. I would say they are world class at transactions, right? And it's a very transactional, I find myself using Amazon in a very transactional fashion. That's challenging for brands because Amazon's not a great place to tell stories about your brand. It's not a great place to be able really to merchandise your brand. Because of the way that Amazon has set its business up, it's very difficult to maintain, of course, any kind of pricing control on Amazon. I think for our stable of brands, some of our brands work quite closely with Amazon and sell a material portion of their revenues, nothing like the 50% that you talked about, but Amazon is a meaningful partner to us, retail partner to us for some of our brands. For some, it's really not, and we've made the decision to not be on Amazon. I think that that comes down to the power of the brand, the availability of the brand in other channels, and also the ability, I would say, to be able to police Amazon, because it does require a significant amount of resource just to manage that channel, manage the resellers on it, manage what they're selling, and try and keep some differentiation between the product line that you might find on Amazon and the product line that you might find in other places. And so that's something that we invest pretty heavily in doing. And again, it varies a little from brand to brand, but it's certainly a theme for our brands. So in general, you will not find all of one of our brand's products on Amazon. You might find a small selection there because it's a great place to go and shop the basics, but it's not necessarily the best place if you're looking for a technical mountaineering jacket and you want to really understand the different criteria behind that jacket and so on. In terms of alternatives to Amazon, I would say that on the one hand, we continue to see Amazon gaining market share and doing outperforming in apparel. On the other hand, I would say that there are a growing set of competitors for Amazon. They don't have anything like the scale or power that Amazon has yet, but they for many of our brands, we're looking at working with different members of that set of competitors and figuring out how they can fit into our overall brand strategy. So some of the ones I'd mentioned, of course, Instagram, which has been a fabulous storytelling platform for brands, is now enabling e-commerce through the Instagram platform, and that's something that, for example, Timberland is working on right now. Target, I think, is very interesting because they have, I think, taken a much more. They have deliberately elected to become a place where brands can tell stories, because it's and can really help to build their brand, because and in that sense they're trying to be the anti-Amazon, I think. And so I think that's a very welcome new entrant and development. And then Walmart, I think, is very interesting. Historically, Walmart was not a place that you would necessarily want to put premium brands. I think Walmart.com is taking a somewhat differentiated approach versus the big box stores, and they're trying to attract more upmarket apparel brands, and we'll see how successful that is.
That is extremely fascinating, and just that change in the role of stores. I think you'd agree that the online growth is constant, and that means that there's this fight for attention. There are these brands that are trying to tell their story online. How are these big fashion brands building out their brand story? How do they become relevant? How are they distinguishing themselves from others?
Yeah, so we talked a little bit about stories and storytelling. I mean, I think it's worth quickly unpacking to ask the question, why does storytelling matter? Why should brands tell their stories? And I think it's because stories are the way we connect with others. They are, our brains, I think, are really hardwired to remember and respond to stories, and our emotional response to stories is much higher than it is to other ways of communicating. So, as brands seek to build relationships and loyalty, storytelling is an incredibly powerful tool to do that. I would say that the stories have to be compelling and interesting. I think they have to be about human beings, because ultimately that's where our, that's what resonates with us from an emotional point of view. And I think they also have to be, they have to be relatively simple. And so the art of storytelling for brands is in kind of being able to create an open story that has emotionally compelling elements, has human elements, but at the same time has a kind of core simplicity that people can understand and remember. But that openness that allows consumers to build that story, as well as brand marketers to build on that story, right, over time, and sort of to come back to the core elements of it, but to be able to keep extending that story. To me, I think that what digital tools have enabled us to do is to tell that story in, so many new ways, and it's obviously created a lot of demands on marketers, for the amount of content that they potentially have to produce, the many different channels that they might need to tell stories on, and I would say, so it's great, but we need to remember that it's really created a huge challenge for marketers, and I think it has changed the skill set requirements for great marketers, right? And this kind of toolbox that they need to have at their disposal. I would say the second piece of this is that it has made it so much easier for consumers to be part of the story, right? And the compelling stories are ones that consumers are part of. One of our brands, JanSport, just launched a TikTok campaign a week or so ago around COVID-19, where they're giving away 10,000 backpacks with food and supplies, and they're doing that by giving one away for each video that someone creates, sharing kind of what's in their home backpack. So, as we're staying inside, maybe not venturing out, you've still got kind of your school, your homeschooling work, perhaps, put together in your backpack. So just having people kind of unpack their packs, so that I think is a powerful way of involving consumers in the storytelling about the brand. If you go onto Instagram, there's almost 23 million posts with the hashtag Vans, and the massive majority of those are not brand created, right? They're created by our consumers, who are telling their own stories and the role that Vans plays in their life. And some of the values that they're espousing, some of the values of creativity and independence and kind of weirdness sometimes, right? That the Vans stands for. And so when you can harness consumers in that way to become part of your brand's overall story, that's incredibly powerful, and that's obviously what digital tools enable Vans and other great apparel and fashion brands to achieve.
Well, thank you so much, Leo. It's been wonderful having you on the show today. So many great insights, so interesting. Love to have you back at another time. I really appreciate all the insights and all the great information you gave us, and thank you for your time.
It's been a pleasure, Bernard. Thank you so much for the invitation. I'd love to come back another time at some point, and I hope that you and all your listeners stay safe and sane.
You've been listening to Digital Breakthroughs, featuring experts in all the areas of cutting-edge digital marketing. Digital Breakthroughs is hosted by Bernard May, CEO of leading social media and digital marketing agency, National Positions, located online at nationalpositions.com.